back to like less biblical but more personal. How do you see religion in your everyday life? And before you answer this question, I also wanted to basically go back because for question one, when you had spoken about like the role of women, you had said that like sexuality is more in the private realm, along with traditional families
Yeah.
emphasized significantly. But in an American individualistic culture, sexuality is now growing more and more so to the public realm, and traditional family is being challenged repetitively. So how do you see your faiths, I guess, clashing or melding with the growing individualistic culture of America? And also, just how do you see religion guide your everyday life, whether you're getting a coffee at Starbucks or doing work?
Yeah, so I'd say Islam, the biggest thing is it gives me a firm grounding and it gives me a firm purpose for why I do anything in life. So ultimately, I understand that God created me, He put me on this earth, and He's going to test me. That's one of the biggest things. Like God says that He created us, He created life and death, to test us who is the best indeed. And ultimately, you're only going to really see who the best people are once they've actually gone through something. So that's the purpose of I that gives me incredible hope because it means that when I go through hardship, God has a plan for me. He's trying to make me stronger. So I'd say that mindset is extremely beneficial for my daily life. It allows me to succeed in my academic stuff when I'm, working hard to get stronger in the gym or when I'm working on my business. Those are like material things, but also in general for just helping others. I understand that every single thing I do, I'll be held accountable for. And Islam has, like I mentioned, Islam has strict boundaries. Like we don't just because, and this kind of goes into your earlier or your first point, when there are certain things that go against Islam or people telling us to do things that go against Islam, we don't give them up. Like that's not optional, like it's not that like we can just water down our religion because, people told us to or their society goes a certain way. Like no, Islam is meant to guide the culture and society. It's meant to stand up against things that are detrimental to society, and it gives us these firm boundaries that we stay within. And Islam does challenge a lot of the norms around sexuality and traditional family and sort of the family and whatnot. But it does so because it provides a better solution. And so by giving people these firm lines for sexuality, you don't have people being unfulfilled. You don't have all these problems where people can't find adequate partners and whatnot. It restricts these things. And also with the family, it provides clear boundaries. Like, okay, the man does this, the woman does this. Like, obviously, it's not just like this purely legalistic framework. There's obviously love within a marriage. But because it has these boundaries, it allows both parties to keep themselves accountable and actually contribute to the relationship. And when people try to sort of encroach on that, Islam is a natural force of resistance against it because what we follow, we believe, comes from God. And God is the one who created the human being. He knows the human being better than we know ourselves. And therefore, He's the most worthy of giving rights and responsibilities to humans, as opposed to humans themselves, who can often be, biased towards
Mm.
whatever certain sort of desires they have. Uh, it doesn't mean that we're gonna like overthrow the government or whatever. It just means that like
No, yeah, yeah, you
yeah,
just
on an
remain.
individual level, there's certain laws, there's certain moral prescriptions that we're not allowed to violate as Muslims.
Have you ever found yourself disagreeing with like a traditional Islamic culture or like tradition, cultural aspect or tradition, given like the rise of individualistic culture, or like you yourself at Penn? Like, have you ever seen yourself at contention with Islam?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the last part?
Yeah, like, have you ever seen yourself at contention with Islam, whether it may be just like the smallest aspect or a concept at whole?
I mean, yeah, a lot of times. Like, obviously, there's like the whole partying culture at Penn, especially. Penn is like a big party school.
Yeah.
And so like people will be like, hey, you like they won't offer me directly, but they're like, oh, do you drink or whatnot? I'm like, no, I'm Muslim. I don't do those things.
Mhm.
Um, and so people will be like confused as to why that is. A lot of people respect it. Some people will just be confused, like it's not that bad or whatever. So I'd say that's like sort of a smaller thing. But in terms of like yeah, that's it. That's kind of. I mean, the thing is, like, at Penn, there's a lot of people here. There's a lot of Muslims. Like, I can hang around people that are not going to be like always pushing down my throat and whatnot. And most people, like, if you set clear boundaries, people are not going to violate them from the start. So I'd say it hasn't been too bad. I'd say Penn is pretty accommodating to some extent.
Oh, I see. So like, do you think like you would have a harder time at if it were like an Alabama type school?
Potentially. Although at the same time, like if it's more traditional, like probably the values would align. Like my dad teaches at Georgetown, for example. And he was telling me that like there's actually a lot of Muslim students within like a lot of the Catholic areas or like the more religious parts of the school, just because it's religious and they're religious too. So like there's alignment of the values, even though like one's Christian, one's Muslim. It's because yeah, we have similar values when it comes to the family, similar values when it comes to sexuality and stuff like that. Um,
Traditional.
and
See.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Um,
yeah, that's true. There's like in all the Abrahamic religions, and even if you want to go further than that, religions in general, they all seem to abide by one universal moral code, say with some different variations, but still there's like a basic morality underlying
yeah, I would
everything.
say
So it
that's
would make
largely
sense.
true.
Yeah,
There's obviously certain things that I would say there's a little more leniency in other faiths. Like I'd say alcohol is the biggest one. Islam is, I'd say, from my knowledge, the only one that outright prohibits it. I think there's like some
yeah,
differences between like different parts of Christianity. I know some Christians are more strict on that when it comes to alcohol. Um, but also, I think one thing to clarify when a sexuality point, Islam is not like this prudish religion where we see like sexuality is just evil or whatever. It's only for procreation or whatnot. It's actually not true. It's just that Islam has boundaries for which it's supposed to be enjoyed, and namely between the relationship between a husband and wife.
Mhm.
Um,
yeah. It's all in moderation with alcohol, with sexuality, with
exactly, yeah. Alcohol, we have it's
well,
strict, but yeah,
yeah,
like
but
yeah, yeah.
with